Yo, MrPokke here. So it is already super late for me now. I'm just not gonna stall anymore and jump straight into whether you should be saving for the fake collaborations and the Himeko Nova for version 4.4, as well as the considerations for the current unit for which is gonna be Blade, as well as the rerun banners, right? So hope you guys had a fulfilling HSR anniversary and a blast with the Elation main push or flagship, whatever you want to call it, because 4.3 I would say is gonna be one of the biggest temptations we've had for a while after the fake collab news alongside with Himeko's Nova. So aside from Blade's impressive performance in multiple teams, early access video coming out this Wednesday, units like Yao Guang as well as Cyrene will have extremely strong meta relevance even in this day, and Phainon mains without E2 will definitely start to sweat, myself included, because my main account does not have an E2 Phainon. That's gonna change very soon, right? Just to add on, this video will only be focusing on version 4.3's banner units. There's gonna be Blade as well as the 3 reruns. We'll not be talking about Rin Tosaka, Gilgamesh, which is gonna be free, or Himeko Nova, that's gonna be coming in version 4.4. And frankly speaking, nobody knows their kids, so this is purely just for the units in version 4.3. So a quick little summary before we jump into the units themselves, slightly related to the pool income of this patch, but Honkai Stereo is going to be getting its 3-team endgame content for Memory of Chaos, Pure Fission, as well as Epoch Shadows, with a full clear awarding 300 Stellar Jades a rotation every 6 weeks. So for this particular update, not only do we have a very minor increase in premium currency, but also the additional usage and purpose for a 3rd team in Honkai Stereo, which has been lagging for a while, especially if you're someone that doesn't really care about 9-starring anomaly arbitration due to the lack of a premium currency incentive. What this means is that team building priorities will no longer just be focusing on 2 teams, and players would actually need to lock in and make a decisive stand on what teams they want to invest in going forward. As such, all future pooling opinions will take into consideration the criteria of a 3rd team's strength as to what your accounts are going to be lacking and whether you should be investing in those additional units or cost for said team. So using my free-to-play account as an example that started in 3.0 with the Hada's banner, I have consistently neglected my 3rd team for a very long time because there were no premium currencies tied to it, getting 6 out of 9 for Enorm Arbitration Knights while aiming for 3-star King purely just for a sense of accomplishment. With the inclusion of this update, my pooling plans will subsequently change as well, since the goal of my free-to-play account has always been to fully clear every single endgame content, especially for those with premium currency, to kind of prove that even as a free-to-play, you're not gate-capped from any of the premium currencies in HSR. So with that out of the way, the banners that we have right now feature 4 key units, 3 being a rerun before one of the most important patches, that is version 4.4, with Rin Tosaka as well as Gilgamesh following very soon. Now firstly, this patch for Blade as well as Yao Guang, it will start on the 1st of June and the first half will end on the 24th of June. Whereas the second half of Cyrene and Phainon will start on the 24th of June and last until the 14th of July. That means that Himeko Nova is going to be starting on the 14th of July, and the fake collaboration actually starts 10 days after Himeko's banner comes out, so they are not going to be happening at the exact same time, even though the fake collaboration is going to be happening on version 4.4, which is very similar to how they did the fake collaboration for Saber and Archer back in Phainon's patch in version 3.4. Second of all, both Cyrene and Phainon's banner does come with this true tier 0 light code, which I'm pretty sure you know what I'm talking about, DDD, so it is something to consider if you want to get additional copies for this specific light code. Last but not least, Yao Guang's banner is going to be with Blade, which means that any Elation flagship users would definitely think of Yao Guang's value, especially for the amount of people who skipped Yao Guang last time, fearing that she will be replaced in the future before they actually knew what Silver Wolf and Evanescence actually did as a main DPS. So with that out of the way, I'm just going to jump straight into the actual unit itself, and the first of which being Mortenax Blade. So early access, like I mentioned, is going to be coming on this Wednesday. We are going to be taking a look at deep dive into his kit, so a detailed video is going to be coming very soon. His general kit, from what we see in the live stream, is that he's going to be a Nihility sub DPS / support with defense down, vulnerability, skill point neutrality, stack generation, 4 Acheron, as well as many other usage. His field over here allows allies to also inflict debuffs, which will completely replace E2 Silver utility in the old Acheron team comp, while also boosting his skill uptime based on the number of attacks that his ally is going to be doing, which lets go of his additional skill one more time. So for Acheron mains, this is going to be an 11 out of 10. For Asheville as well as Hyper Carry users, this is going to be a 7 out of 10. So if Asheville brought Facial back from the verge of tier 3, then Blade is pretty much the same for Acheron. And yes, I did say verge of tier 3 because this video I'm like not streamer mode, it's just going to be me talking to you guys, no cortisol. So because of the way that M-Blade's kit work. An ally with a high attack frequency can now apply debuffs for Aircraft, meaning a team with either Tribi or Asheville can generate a significant amount of debuff stacks without relying on E2 Silverwolf, which can greatly improve your Aircraft's personal damage output purely from the additional amount of ultimates she can output. While whether this is going to be enough to bring Aircraft to tier 0, it will entirely depend on Aircraft's actual damage multipliers for the ultimate, which frankly, personally speaking, she could use a Nova Flare, but more on the early access guide. Now, one thing to note is that there's a very big caveat with M-Blade, which is with the buffs and utility that can be comparable to Cypher and Tribi while having a DPS output around the same level as Asheville, a concern for M-Blade with Aircron is also going to be a very similar issue for Asheville with Phainon, which is how strong is the main DPS. So while the buffing potential is definitely there for Aircron, there is a very high chance that M-Blade's personal multipliers and kit might just be more suitable as a hyper carry by himself, or even with Asheville instead of running him with a version 2 non-Nova Flare DPS as Aircron, whereas overall performance may be potentially dragged down by pure multiplier standpoints compared to the current version 4 environment, team comps, as well as endgame content. As such, M-Blade as well as Asheville already have a really good amount of synergy between both the follow-up attacks as well as the debuffs. There might be a possibility for a version 4 main DPS that fits in that slot perfectly to take this entire team to the next level and potentially even compete with the Elation flagship, which means at the exact same time, your Aircron team running M-Blade as well as Asheville might just become homeless because the best in slot teammate is just pretty much going to be another main DPS that will also use M-Blade as well as Asheville. Think of a scenario like releasing Sunday back then to buff Jingyuan, but eventually they still join Sunday for Aglaia. I think that might definitely be a possibility right there. So at this point, I would say if you know you want to use Aircron for a long time, no matter how many costs you're willing to invest in the Aircron team, then using M-Blade and getting him is going to be pretty much one of the closest thing to a must pull for you as an Aircron user. However, if you're going to be pulling M-Blade purely for the purpose of chasing meta and fast clears as someone that skipped Elation and you're looking for an alternative team comp that doesn't necessarily need Aircron, then his performance as a main DPS himself or the potential of a future main DPS might have more value than just being tied to an Aircron support, which once again follows a very similar footstep to Asheville as well as Phainon. So with M-Blade out of the way, we're just going to talk quickly about the reruns, first half being Yao Guang and the second half being Cyrene as well as Phainon. And I figure for all of our future rerun reviews, I will look at them purely from the perspective of cost maxing. You can check out Island tier list right here, as well as the upcoming cost maxing video coming out in the future. So first of all, Yao Guang, which is going to be the rerun alongside with M-Blade. This is going to be a tough choice for Silverwolf and Evanesia pullers who skipped the Yao Guang back then while you were waiting for your main DPS's release, which is going to be what your kids are going to be doing before confirming if you want to play Elation. So if you have played Silverwolf and you have played Evanesia, I think by now you will see the difference that you're going to be making with or without Yao Guang. And if you really like the way that the kits are going to be working and you want to use Silverwolf and Evanesia, then Ezo, Azo, Yao Guang with the S5 Mushroom for Memory of Chaos is going to be an excellent one-choice upgrade for both main Elation DPS. Doesn't really matter if you're using Silverwolf or Evanesia. For Silverwolf mains, whether or not she'll be replaced by a future Elation Cyrene, this is once again purely speculation. While Sparksy will stay in the Silverwolf team, you can keep your investment at just one cost Ezo as 0 and wait for the future before committing any further investments into Yao Guang. For Evanesia mains, on the other hand, Yao Guang is actually going to be a much more safer one cost or even two cost upgrade at E1 S0 into E1 S1 from a damage perspective, because an Elation Cyrene can easily replace the current EMC slot in Evanesia while you still keep Yao Guang on your team. For both Sylve and Evanesia, I can definitely see a very high usage rate for an Elation sustain, which might also be coming out in the future. So generally for the Elation main DPS who already pulled Yao Guang back then, E1 is going to be more of a damage upgrade than S1, but S1 does in fact enable your turn 1 Yao Guang ultimate for a fast hard instance that may be beneficial purely from a zero cycle perspective, although I must say that the Mushroom S5 is an extremely good substitute, so you can definitely do way more damage with E1 Yao Guang. Otherwise, save for Elation Sustain, which I would say have a much bigger relevance in version 4.5 or more, CN also recommends going for 0-0 followed by 1-0, 1-1, 2-1 followed by 6-1, although 1-1 is an excellent stopping point for Yao Guang. Now moving on to the next unit, and there's gonna be Cyrene. She's still gonna be the glue for your Remembrance flagship. There's gonna be Castris, Avalon, as well as Hyacinth. For even Avalon main DPS without Castris, Cyrene is still gonna be extremely important, though other and forest units will need more cost investments in Cyrene to bring them up with a sustained setup. For the Remembrance mains, E0, S0 is gonna be a sufficient 1 cost upgrade, then work on your Avalon E1 followed by E2, followed by your Hyacinth E1 and her E2. That being said, if you do own multiple Enforced units, or if you want to try playing Honkai style in a completely different setting with a team-wide 100% ultimate recharge, then investing in an E2 as well as Cyrene for 3 costs, you can try for yourselves for the fun factor of team building that can enable a lot of different variations. Video on this coming very soon, because I did just activate my E2 Cyrene not too long ago and I did not play enough of it. Then last but not least, Phainon. For players looking to play Phainon, understand that at a baseline cost perspective, he will definitely struggle to keep up with the current environment of Elation and occasional break shielding here and there for Firefly as well as Dahlia. That being said, for Phainon mains who want to keep using Phainon, getting E2 Phainon is going to be the most crucial 2-cost upgrade bar none in any vertical investments, be it Cyrene, E2 Cyrene, DHPD, whatever it's going to be. Even if, for example, Sunday or Cyrene or Sparkle or RMC, or even, God forbid, Cyrene were to change in the future in the Phainon team, his E2 will forever be permanent and will never ever leave his kit, making him till this day one of the strongest E2 DPS without a shielding environment ever since his launch. So I would say for Phainon mains, E2 S0 followed by his S1, then save cost from there. Or I would say though, getting the S1 in Phainon does in fact increase the damage output by a lot, especially with the additional base speed. So with that, we've pretty much come to the end of our very quick and dirty video on the pruning opinions in version 4.3. Honestly, it's a pretty short patch as well as a short amount of units compared to what might be coming in version 4.4, because we haven't even seen their reruns, but we do have a very impressive lineup in this current point of time. So remember to save as strategies as possible, because we don't even know what's the Elation sustain. Is there going to be Elation Cyrene? What's going to be happening in IPC? We still have Nihilux and Pro, etc. So definitely try to save as much as you can. So just to summarize everything once a little bit, Blade is going to be a definitive upgrade for Aggron mains who still want to use Aggron. Otherwise, his performance is most likely going to be better in a hyper carry or as a sub DPS with a future main DPS in version 4. And then for the rerun banners, Yao Guang is definitely going to be a hard sell for the Elation mains. Phainon and Cyrene more so for players who still want to explore Inferiors or alternative team building. So with that, we've come to the end of this video. Let me know what you guys think of this format, as well as like the cadence of everything. Word of the day is pretty much going to be wholly overworking. Join Twitch, join Discord, use code POKE for 10% off Gamers Subs, and I'll see you guys next time. Take care.
Play with me if you don't want to cry or dance with me.